Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your archbishop of Banterbury, your chancellor of cheerfulness, your evangelist of the imagination, and your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, me, Robert Meyer Burnett. And once again, I am Robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity. This is Robservations, episode number 657. Robservations is, of course, the show about something. I have something kind of fun for you guys. So, as you might know, I edited a short science fiction film written and directed by Lucas Kendall. And we sold it to the Dust channel. It's on Dust. But we also, because it was crowdfunded, one of the perks for crowdfunding was a 2-disc set with the Blu-ray of the film on one disc and the 80s throwback synth soundtrack on the other disc. And I'm happy to say for the next 2 weeks, every day, I am going to give away one of these discs. And unlike other things that I've given away, the actual manufacturing facility is going to dispatch these discs directly to you. And if you are interested in one, I'm going to give away one at the beginning of the show every day. I'm going to give one away right now. So, mods, all I need from you is I'm going to need whoever wins this. I'm going to ask a trivia question. Every day I'm going to ask a trivia question. And if you win, mods, what I need is your address, your email, and your phone number. And I'd love it if somebody would immediately get those for me from the person who wins so I can send it to Lucas so he can have the discs dispatched to you in about a month. So I'll just be doing this for the next couple weeks. So are you ready for today's trivia question? Here it comes. Steven Spielberg's E.T., the Extraterrestrial, was shot under a cover name. What was the name? What was the cover title? The fake title E.T. was shot under. So there wouldn't be so much scrutiny. What was the fake title that E.T. was shot under while it was in production? First person to get it wins a disc of Skyfighter, which is, pretty cool. I'm going to see if anyone gets it. Let's see. Yeah, you answered the question right there in the chat. Right there in the chat, the first person to get it. The official Doogie got it. The official Doogie got it. So the official Doogie J. So the official Doogie J, give your name, your phone number, and your email address to, and your real name, or your mailing address. I need your name, your mailing address, your email, and your phone number. And we're going to send it right to the replication facility, and they're going to ship that out to you in about a month. So congratulations, you just won a double disc of our short film, Skyfighter, and the 80s throwback soundtrack, which is actually very exciting. Now you were quick on the uptake there. Nicely done, son. Well done. So, there's good news. Good news in Deadline today. Look at this good news. Godzilla vs. Kong scores best opening day of the pandemic with 9.6 million opening day. Woohoo! On Wednesday, moviegoers demonstrated that they were truly yearning to go back to the movies. How's that? Warner Brothers Legendary's Godzilla vs. Kong posted what is a record opening day during the pandemic, with 9.6 million at the domestic box office from 2,409 theaters, or $3,980 per location. Since mid-March 2020, when theaters closed and slowly returned in late August, no other film has done this type of business. Even though folks can watch Godzilla vs. Kong at home on Warner Media's streaming service HBO Max for the next 30 days. There are those who want to get out and experience this monster clash in a boom shakalaka rattling auditorium on a big screen. The box office projection heading into this weekend over 5 days for Godzilla vs. Kong was 20 to 30 million. I said between 40 and 50. Hopefully, the film can easily beat that. We say hope because we don't know how front-loaded Wednesday's opening day is. Nonetheless, this is an encouraging sign for the motion picture industry. Keep in mind, MGM's No Time to Die was originally scheduled to open over Easter weekend, and when that moved to the fall due to the hopeful availability of more offshore markets, Warner Brothers moved Godzilla vs. Kong to what is traditionally a lucrative holiday box office weekend. Prior to Godzilla vs. Kong, it was Warner Brothers' Wonder Woman 1984 that held the best first-day opening title during the pandemic with $7.5 million on December 25th. Also a big plus here is that word of mouth for Godzilla vs. Kong is the best it's ever been for a legendary monster movie, with an A cinema score trampling the B-plus grades earned by 2014's Godzilla and 2017's Kong Skull Island and 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. CineScore Screen Engine's post-track audience exits were also strong with 86% and 4.5 stars and a 74% definite recommend. So as a theatrical experience goes, that's pretty good. Gotta like that, right? Godzilla vs. Kong is the first title to play on 3,000 theaters, which will be reached Friday as Regal reopens 22 of its prime locations in the U.S., including their 42nd Street locations in New York City and LA Live, among many others. In some, 655 locations get added Friday for a total count of 3,064 theaters. PLFs drove 17% of Godzilla vs. Kong's Wednesday business, while IMAX repped 8%. Keep in mind, most of Canada is closed, with only 25% of the country's exhibition open, and the Adam Wingard-directed Monster Mash is largely available on premium VOD there. Wednesday demos for Godzilla vs. Kong show 63% guys who graded it an A, 37% females an A, under 18 at 24% A+, under 24 at 48% A, over 25 52% A, under 35 72% A, and over 35 28% A-. The fourth Quell has the best Rotten Tomatoes score out of the legendary monster movies with an 80% certified fresh, besting Godzilla's 76% fresh, Kong Skull Island's 75% fresh, and 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters awful at 42% rotten. African-American audiences gave Godzilla vs. Kong a 92% positive rating and an 85% definite recommend on Post-Track. The pick's overall first-day diversity demos were 33% Caucasian, 27% Hispanic, 23% African-American, 10% Asian, 7% Native American, and other. Also opening Friday is Screen Gem's horror film The Unholy, which I am very excited about, on 1,850 screens. So that's very exciting. So good on Godzilla vs. Kong. Good on movies. Good on theaters for coming back. Pretty excited about that. By the way, The Unholy is actually a literary adaptation of a book that I read when it first came out in, I want to say, 83. Was it 83? James Herbert. And one of the things, I was a huge, James Herbert was one of the authors. The first time I read James Herbert, I was going to summer camp. I was at the Flying Horseshoe Ranch in Cle Elum, Washington. There is a Grand Dude Ranch down in Teanaway Valley where deer and elk are playing right near my front door. So anyway, I was at that camp, and someone gave me a copy of The Rats to read. I think there were 3 James Herbert Rats novels. But what I loved about James Herbert, his early stuff, was incredible sex, incredible violence, and really interesting stories. And he wrote a book called The Fog, not based on John Carpenter's movie, that was about nerve gas that made people go crazy. And it also had great sex in it. And I was 11 reading this stuff because I was a horny kid that loved violence. And it was great. I love James Herbert. But then his largest book that he had published to date was a book called Shrine. And it's basically about a girl who starts performing miracles, but things don't go the way people think they're going to go. But the notices are pretty good. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan stars in it as a disgraced reporter who got caught making up stories glass style or whatever. And I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. So we got Kong, we got Godzilla versus Kong, and we have the Unholy opening. Now, I've seen Godzilla versus Kong. Now I'm going to save my review of it. Elizabeth and I are going to do a whining about movies, I think tomorrow, and we're going to talk about Godzilla versus Kong. But I have to say, I have to say the movie is a King Kong centric film, and it is, which is, I guess, fine. But I feel that it was uneven, and as a Teamzilla person, staunch Teamzilla person, I was a little disappointed from that respect, and we'll talk about that later. And the movie to me was wildly uneven. The visual effects are marvelous to behold, however, and ultimately, I think the movie's kind of all over the place. But I enjoyed it. But we're going to talk about it at length on Whining About Movies tomorrow night with the ace, the arbiter of cinematic excellence. But, it got me thinking. The great Peter Bart, former studio head, now pundit, writing for Deadline. He's been covering the entertainment business. He was one of the most important executives in Hollywood at one point. He wrote an interesting article that I wanted to share with you today, also in Deadline. And this is kind of interesting. You don't hear Midnight Cowboy brought up much, but for any of you cinephiles, imagination connoisseurs who have never seen Midnight Cowboy was actually a very important, groundbreaking film that stars Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman. And yes, it was rated X. It was rated X. But Peter Bart wrote an article today. Hollywood needs a big hit to spark its recovery. So what is the next Midnight Cowboy? At first, when I started this, I'm like, is this an April Fool's Day article? Hollywood's great reawakening seems at hand. Sort of. The cameras are rolling, the theaters are opening, the wannabe blockbusters have nailed new playdates. Even Bob Iger last week revealed his exit date, marking his kingdom's new era. But when the curtains rise, will the audience applaud? Paradoxically, I was reading a new book this week that posed a metaphor for the Hollywood moment. Titled Shooting Midnight Cowboy, the book by Glenn Frankel portrayed the shadow of doom hovering over a movie about to start shooting 50 years ago. Its young director, John Schlesinger, was semi-suicidal because the critics had just savaged his latest picture. With Cowboy, had he again chosen the wrong cast and the wrong setting? His studio seemed to share the young Brit's paranoia. Fearful of its gay subtext and potential X rating, United Artists had cut his budget and reduced his pay to $100,000. His young star, Jon Voight, annoyed Schlesinger by repeatedly asking, "What's the motivation of my character?" To which Schlesinger would shout, "All you're looking for is a good fuck." Schlesinger, aged 36, almost pulled the plug on Midnight Cowboy, which ultimately opened to jubilant reviews and Oscars for Best Picture and Best Director. Arguably, its unlikely triumph gave cinema a new vigor and Hollywood a wake-up call. Hence the parallel. A cool analysis of today's obstacles has led some industry gurus to share Schlesinger's abject paranoia. The audience seems to have moved on. Tucked securely into its home screening rooms, passively awaiting Netflix nurture. Could a movie like Black Widow seriously intrude upon the world's billion-dollar binge? To be sure, Hollywood's cheerleaders have faithfully come forward with their optimistic quotes, from Jason Kilar of Warner Media to Tom Bernard of Sony Classics. Theaters will come back strong. One or two hits can change everything, they point out. Midnight Cowboy itself symbolized the transformative miracle. Francis Coppola, in a speech to the Academy, tells about his 1972 encounter with Kirk Kerkorian, the man who then owned both MGM and Las Vegas casinos. Having just seen The Godfather, Kerkorian asked the filmmaker, "Why did you make an art movie about gangsters?" Coppola replied, "I too like risk." Kerkorian blanched. From its origins, Hollywood has been addicted to risk, and its risks of the moment seem like those of a startup. Will the troubled negotiations over windows be resolved to the satisfaction of both creators and exhibitors? Will the hybrid distribution strategy for the studios work for the studios or its stars? For that matter, will actors and their agents or managers embrace the complex new compensation formulas that provide bonuses but not gross receipts if and when a movie becomes a hit on its platform? Gal Gadot and director Patty Jenkins received between $13 to $15 million on top of their regular compensation as prospective bonus payments covering Wonder Woman 1984. As blockbuster streamers break new ground with formulas, filmmakers in the indie arena have become increasingly fretful. The keys to indie success seem anachronistic in today's environment. Festival openings followed by a limited release building word-of-mouth support. Films like Parasite and Moonlight played for 20 weeks in key theaters. A model dependent on building an audience will simply not be able to sustain itself in the new world order, argues Ted Mundorf, the former chief of Landmark Theaters who became COO of ArcLight Cinemas Pacific Theaters. Given all this, the saga of Midnight Cowboy is even more remarkable. As depicted by Frankel, every step in the film's development seemed out of step. Dustin Hoffman, who had cleverly mastered Ratso Rizzo's limp and homeless demeanor, was unexpectedly conscripted to first play a clean-cut wasp in The Graduate. Dustin likes dancing on the third rail, warned a casting agent. On the first day of the Cowboy shoot, the crew encountered a sanitation workers' strike. New York streets were littered for 7 days by rotting drifts of garbage. Surviving the rubble, Schlesinger and producer Jerome Hillman were next devastated by the X rating handed down by the MPAA ratings board, whose chairman alluded darkly to the film's homosexual frame of reference. By contrast, the simultaneous rating from the Catholic Code was more lenient, its official newsletter praising the film for depicting a rich and poignant relationship which has the ring of humanity at its purest. Life magazine quickly responded with a cover depicting Hoffman and John Wayne side by side under the banner Dusty and the Duke, a choice of heroes. The concept of a heroic Ratso delighted Hoffman. Wayne was less exuberant. He promptly decided to seek firmer ground, in true grit. I thought that was pretty interesting comparing, Midnight Cowboy, 1969, one of those films that really ushered in the new era of Hollywood that sort of changed everything. Hollywood was dying on the vine with the studios making movies that nobody really wanted to see, that certainly weren't taking into account the cultural revolution that was going on America's streets, whether it was civil rights, whether it was women's liberation, or whether it was anti-war protests against the Vietnam War. I mean, the country was being torn apart. You had free love, you had rock and roll, you had drugs, and yet they were still trying to force musicals down our throats. And then, of course, movies like Easy Rider and Midnight Cowboy changed the landscape and giving way to the 1970s, which is arguably one of the greatest, most vibrant periods in American cinema, probably not since maybe the 1940s and the 1970s are probably the greatest era of American cinema in terms of movies that resonate beyond the time in which they're made, bona fide classics, not everything, but a lot of things. So are we there? Could we be at the beginning of a new era? Is Hollywood just looking for something like an Easy Rider or Easy Riders? No, it's Easy Rider. It's Easy Rider's Raging Bull, but the movie's Easy Rider. Or Midnight Cowboy? I don't think so. I don't think that'll ever come again. I don't think there's anybody at the studios. They would laugh at you. As a matter of fact, I don't think there's many people at the studios that even have seen Midnight Cowboy or Easy Rider for that matter. Or maybe they have because they felt they must. But it's interesting to me to think that we now live in a world where we wonder if movie theaters are going to exist and we get King Kong or Godzilla versus King Kong. That's where we're at. That's what's ushering in the new era of box office excitement, which as a lifelong kaiju movie fan, I think that's great. Fantastic. I just wish, I wanted Godzilla versus Kong to be better than it was. I think it's a little goofy and it's a little all over the place, but there's still a lot to love about it. Again, I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but I do worry. I do wonder about the future of movies and where they're going to go. The studios are making giant spectacle entertainments, but it seems like those movies play hard and fast and kind of burn out. Yeah, you might watch them later on, but you go to the theater to see spectacle now, not to be enlightened or elated. And, well, I guess, I don't know, watching Godzilla versus Kong fight was elating. But you know what I mean? It's just a different world. And I think that, look, I really want to see Bond and Dune. To me, Bond and Dune is a studio blockbuster that also resonates. It's also a literary adaptation of a book that meant a lot to me growing up. So to me, that's the perfect kind of studio movie. I'm sure they think of it as an action tentpole property. We'll see. I'm dying to know what's going to happen when Dune gets released. But look, I want movies to come back. I do want to see Fast and Furious. I do want to see all my beloved franchise properties. But I'd also like to see something that resonates with me, that I can watch over and over, that has meaning. So we shall see. I don't know. What do you guys think? You excited? You going back to the theaters? Are you waiting for the vaccine? I can get vaccinated now. It's just hard to find where exactly am I going to get vaccinated around here. We shall see. We shall see. I got a lot of letters. So, we don't know. We don't know. I don't know what I was saying. We don't know. Let's see what this has to say. Let me start with this one. H. Bihaga says, "Hi, Rob. I've recently gotten curious about the process of adapting a novel to the screen, and conversely, how a script or a screenplay gets novelized. I know a couple of people who've had their work optioned for the screen, and one guy who worked for a company in Pasadena that had something to do with getting scripts novelized. What's your experience with this sort of thing?" That's interesting. Well, I'll tell you. I can actually... the screenplay that I'm working on now for the project that I want to make next, that I want to direct, is a... let's call it a modern... science fiction religious fantasy. And it's based on a book. And I'm working on it with the actual, the author of the book and I are co-writing the script. And what's interesting about it is, when you fall in love with a book and you want to tell the story of that book, I think the really important thing is, first, you have to distill the story down into cinematic form. Like, for instance, Stephen King adaptations are always something that I look to because so many of them either haven't worked or are disappointing, and yet they might be based on books that are quite good, but they just don't survive the translation. And the question is, why? Why didn't they survive that translation? And so, when anyone who's adapting a book, Stanley Kubrick really only adapted books. He even worked with people like Vladimir Nabokov himself to write the script for Lolita. And I think a great book, which he worked with the author of the book, but then he adapted The Shining, which is very, very different than Stephen King's original novel, as we all know. And King didn't actually like the Shining adaptation, famously. But The Shining is very much, I think, a Kubrick movie. I think a lot of people do like The Shining. But, I think when you're distilling a book down, you have to decide, okay, first and foremost, like anything, you like the characters, you like the story. And the question is, a book isn't a movie. Show, don't tell. You can't have inner monologues of characters. So you have to figure out a way to show, not tell. And it just begins a process. And really, as I've explained on this show a couple times, if you are writing a screenplay, so for anybody who is writing a screenplay, one of the things that people have to learn to do is you have description and you have dialogue, pretty much it. And with your description, you have to set the scene for the script. And your description needs to work for a reader. If someone's going to read your script, the reader who's reading your script must see in their mind's eye everything you want them to see, and they're going to imagine when they read your script, they're going to imagine seeing it in their mind. And if what they see in their minds is evocative, if they really get it, if you paint a rich picture for them in their minds, that's a good screenplay. there is a way to write a script that sounds good. And so I'll give you an example. As a matter of fact, I don't know, you tell me. I posted this on the Facebook page. I will read you the first page of the script that I am writing, that the original book, it's a scene that is not in the original book, that the author of the novel who worked on the screenplay, it was not in the original draft of the script, and it's not based on a scene that's in the novel. So I wrote this myself, and I thought it would be a better way to open the film because we're sort of, and you tell me. So here's the first page of the script that I wrote. Fade in. Interior, Orange County megachurch, noon. A sumptuous crystalline cathedral. Thousands of the faithful sit waiting in breathless anticipation underneath broken shafts of heavenly sunlight. The stage, fit for an arena rock band. Lighting grids, massive banks of speakers, manned camera positions all around to capture the show. A spotlight dramatically blasts from above. The opening theme music to Hallelujah House, played by the house band, pounds from the speakers. A single figure steps out upon the stage. Our host, world-famous televangelist Emil Zacharias. Tall, slender, bespoke. A pale-skinned smooth talker with an armor-piercing gaze. His radiant smile threatens to engulf his entire face in a single gulp. Prancing to the front of the stage, Zacharias raises his outstretched arms as if to embrace the entire crowd. Thunderous applause. The cameras catch every angle. The consummate showman Zacharias dramatically puts his palms up, silencing the room. He breathes deeply, sucking half the air out of the auditorium. There is a godless evil in the world today. It favors no color, creed, or gender. The crowd leans forward enraptured. It twists the souls of our children into seething cauldrons of hatred. That evil is Satan himself. The crowd roars approval as one camera pushes into an extreme close-up of Zacharias' face. Cut to, that's page 1. It's the opening scene, the introduction of our character, Emil Zacharias. So there you go. That was not in the book. The scene, the character is a noted televangelist, but there was no scene in the book where he is actually being a televangelist. And I thought that it was important after we had the finished version of the script. I was looking at it going, you know what? We got to introduce this character with a bang. And since this character is not, it's not an action film per se, why not show... And, you know, I once went to the Crystal Cathedral in Orange County, and I thought, what a interesting place to open a movie. And we show that this man is a rock star. So you understand. And he's a rock star on the global stage. So I figured in this opening moment, we get to meet Emil Zacharias and know exactly who he is. You tell me. So that wasn't in the script. But I thought we needed that moment. I thought we needed it opens with a bang. It literally opens on a stage. You know, all the world's a stage. You have one of our main characters, one of our main players, literally walking on a stage to Christian rock and thousands of adoring and enraptured fans. So we get it. We get it in a fun visual way. I could be wrong. You know, your mileage may vary. But I thought that was what I wanted. I wanted a big moment, and then we can go from there. So you know who he is. You know who he is. So in adapting a book, I don't know. Sometimes you have to do things where, and it was interesting because I went through the book and I'm like, you know what? We never see this character in his own element, in his original milieu. And I thought, what a way to do it. So, you know, it's part of adapting a book. Now, on the flip side is when somebody is novelizing a script, like if Alan Dean Foster, who novelized Alien and John Carpenter's The Thing, they do the exact opposite. They take they take the description and they add the inner monologues of characters. They add all the details that when you explain the milieu, the setting. It's the art department, the production designer that looks and says, okay, where is this Crystal Cathedral? Where are we going to get these cameras? Where are we going to set them up? Like, what's going to happen? And I actually have storyboards for all this, so I know what it's going to look like. But it was actually based on a real place that doesn't exist on the East Coast. I didn't use the Crystal Cathedral in Orange County, but it is based on a real place. But a person novelizing the story, and they don't really novelize movies anymore. You know, they used to be a big deal. I used to collect them. My friend Dave Hargrove has a huge collection, and there's a couple guys I know that are actually working on a documentary about people who wrote movie novelizations. So basically, it's the reverse. You're expanding a script. You're taking a 90-page or 120-page script, and you're blowing it up and adding all the detail that would be put in by what you would normally see, and then you add in more of an inner monologue of the characters. So there you go. That's a long answer. I hope that gives you a little bit of illumination. I don't know, but what can I say? Tom Jr. Jackson writes in and says, "Greetings, Rob. It is I, your existential Forrest Gump." That's right, Tom Jr. Jackson. Today, I want to write in about a film I willingly chose to watch. Follow me on a journey, Rob, on a journey about a little film that is on Netflix called Jiu-Jitsu. Would it shock you if I told you that Nick Cage is in this film? No? Good, because he's in this film along with Frank Grillo. Last Sunday, I saw this film was streaming on Netflix, and I said, hey, why not? So I began to watch this film, and what came to my mind right away was, holy shit, this film looks like it belongs in the Sci-Fi Channel. You think I joke, but please walk this way and let me explain more to you of why I think this looks like it belongs on Netflix. So the basic plot. A man is being chased by someone throwing what looks like ninja stars at him, and he's running through a forest and decides to jump off a cliff to avoid not being killed. So on his way down, he hits his head, and that's right, you guessed it, can't remember anything. He's picked up by a Korean couple who fix him up and dump him at an army base or camp. That is where our film starts to pick up. I won't bore you with the entire plot in case you want to watch this for yourself. It felt like the filmmakers couldn't decide on what genre they wanted the film to be. Was it a comic book movie? Was it a martial arts movie? Was it a sci-fi movie? Was it a military movie? To be honest, I couldn't tell. And I don't think the filmmakers knew either. I'm serious about all this. I didn't know how I would even be able to describe this film at all. If you watch the trailer for this film, I'll be honest with you. The majority of the cuts that show Nick Cage in it was basically all the scenes he's in. No, really, it's just that. Frank Grillo, well, that's a different story. He's in it for maybe 10 minutes if you add all of his scenes together. What was funny is that it makes you think Nick Cage has top billing, but does he? Does he? Nope. When you watch the film during the opening credits, it says, and Nick Cage. He's literally the last name shown for the cast credits at the beginning of the film. So, as Dieter Bastian might say, was it good trash or bad trash? It was confusing trash, but you can watch it yourselves and be the judge. It was nice to write in and let you know my thoughts on this film. So, until the next letter, Tom Jr. Jackson. Well, Tom, in my case, as much as I might like Nick Cage and Frank Grillo for that matter, I think that you've done us all a disservice, or all of service, depending on where you're coming from, by watching the movie and weighing in. I think for me, you have made me realize that while I thought Mandy was very much a worthwhile use of my time, and I even bought the Blu-ray, perhaps Jiu-Jitsu is better left unseen. So thank you for writing in. I very much appreciate that. This is pretty funny. This comes from Stuart Winstanley. Hi, Rob. I just wanted to offer my take on the whole woke thing. I can draw a comparison to religion. There's a quote from the Dalai Lama that goes, if every leader from every religion stood in a room together, they would agree on everything. If all the followers and disciples of those religions stood in a room together, they would disagree on everything. The point is that all religions at their core teach peace and love, and when people get bogged down in the small print, well, that's when issues arise. In the 60s, the message was peace and love to everybody. No small print. Today, it's all about the small print. This seems to be the core of the problem. I'm a hippie at heart, and I think we should all aspire to be more like the hippies of the 60s. Okay, but do we have to smell like them? No, I don't know. I'm just kidding. I just can't deal with patchouli, man. Nowadays, people are militant when they think they have right on their side. Anyway, on a lighter note, have you seen the film Head of the Family? It is as awesome as it is terrible. I think you'd enjoy it. Check out the pic below. Well, I worked at Full Moon, and Full Moon made Head of the Family. It's a Charlie Band special. So I will show you, if you haven't seen it. This is a small picture. Cheers to yourself, the Post-Geek Singularity. Stu. Well, Stu, Head of the Family, not one of Full Moon's better efforts. For those of you who might not be familiar with this just lovely slice of cinematic accomplishment, allow me to show it to you, although this is the picture he gave me is really, it's low res. So, but I'll show it to you anyway. Here is Head of the Family. Yeah, it's literally just that. It's about a head. So there you go. Not a great film. Can't recommend it. But hey, I guess if you're baked, it's a baked assessment, right? Maybe Head of the Family will work for you. It's no shrunken heads, let me tell you that. This one comes from the real Vince Russa. Rob, I've recently found your show, and I have to say I'm hooked. Although I typically don't catch the show when it first airs, it's become one of my favorite end-of-the-day rituals to unwind and just enjoy the topics. With that in mind, I'd like to ask, what are your thoughts on the recent rumor about Henry Cavill taking on the role of Wolverine for Marvel? I definitely believe he has the physical attributes to pull off the role, maybe too tall, but I guess I never thought my favorite Superman would end up playing my favorite X-Man. Thanks for all that you do, and keep rocking that incredible flow. I try, Vince. My vocal stylings, what can I say? The lyrical fill. I wonder, as an X-Men comic fan from 35 years ago, Wolverine was named Wolverine because he was short and hairy. He's like 5 feet tall. He's shorter than Prince. And yes, he has his adamantium skeleton. I mean, a lot of people think they don't know that. They're like, really? But Hugh Jackman's this strapping 6 foot plus guy. Yes. Yes, he absolutely was. But Wolverine was a little guy. And the fastball special, when Colossus would pick Wolverine up and throw him, that's snicked, and the blades would come out and he would take out a sentinel or whatever, is very different from the Wolverine that we've been given in the films. Now, here's the thing. When I first saw Brian's X-Men back in 21 years ago, I'm like, all right, well, I really liked Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. I mean, he's a handsome guy. I liked his face. He looked great in the role. And after a while, it did not bother me that he wasn't the Wolverine of the comics. And I think the other experience I had was Jack Reacher. I'm a huge Tom Cruise fan. I always have been, all the way back to Risky Business. Huge fan of Tom Cruise. But when he was cast to play Jack Reacher in Lee Child's Jack Reacher books, I'm like, wait, what? Like, Jack Reacher's this huge Hulk brute, just gigantic. He's like 6'5" or something, 6'8". He's a gigantic dude. And Tom Cruise is like 5'7", 5'8", maybe he'll tell you he's 5'10". But I'm like, how does that work? And I have to say, when I saw Chris McQuarrie's first Jack Reacher movie, I'm like, okay, I'd read the books, but it's Tom Cruise playing a character that didn't come anywhere near what my mind's eye conjured up when I thought about Jack Reacher. But maybe the new series will do a better job. But still, I like the first Jack Reacher a lot. I'm like, all right, I'll buy into this. I'll go with this, because why not? All right. But it's weird. My whole thing is, at the end of the day, if you have an actor that can play the character and make you believe, the general public is not going to be watching X-Men going, well, Wolverine's only 5 feet tall. They don't know that. The general population does not know that. So it does it work for you? Does it work for you? Henry Cavill as Wolverine. I really like Henry Cavill. I think he's handsome. I think he can be dangerous. I think with the facial hair we saw in Mission Impossible Fallout, I definitely think that he's got the ferocity to be a Wolverine. But again, you have this very tall, strapping man. And I'm wondering, because the world at large now sees Wolverine as Hugh Jackman, Henry Cavill could be pretty great casting. It just, it looks like Wolverine is going up in the world as opposed to getting back to where maybe, I don't know, maybe he should be if you're a comic fan. This one comes from our friend Pedro Ferreira. Writes in, hello, Pedro. Hi, Rob. I have been reading Mark Clark's unofficial Star Trek fact books recently. The first covers the genesis of Star Trek all the way up until the struggles to make the motion picture. Actually, that's, are you talking about not Mark Clark, but Mark Cushman, maybe? Mark Cushman's books? The first covers the genesis of Star Trek all the way until the struggles to make the motion picture. It's not a bad book, even if it doesn't provide any new info for fans. The second book, which covers the entirety of TNG and all the movies up until Star Trek 2009, is a complete misfire by Clark. Oh, maybe it is Clark. Taken from my user book review, let me just copy here what was said there. TNG is the main focus and very little is said about the other spin-off shows. Clark this time takes more chronological approaches while critiquing every episode and film that came out in the 1980s, and with TNG, every 1990s episode, and none of it really works. DS9, Voyager, and Enterprise are seen as an afterthought. Merchandise like video games, toys, and books are completely left out. Clark is especially dictatorial and opinionated in his views regarding individual bits of the franchise. Instead of trying to see the strengths in it all as good reference books do, he instead takes sides. I don't need to be told what is and isn't good Star Trek. That's up to me. Yet Clark likes to, or me, by the way. That's up to me, yet Clark likes to reiterate internet fan forum consensus using critics' votes to back up his views being correct. He writes like he almost expects us to have the same views as him, which I find pretentious. I don't need to be told Season 1 of TNG is weak, when I think of what they managed is impressive in some ways compared to, Clark puts it, the prime years. I didn't think Generations was a weak movie, but a strong one, at least compared to one person's praise. He just regurgitates the same points other fans have, pretty much saying that even-numbered Star Trek movies until Nemesis are great, and the odd-numbered ones automatically are failures. He's not consistent in his critiquing either. Ironically, the same criticisms he makes towards stuff in Star Trek TNG or their movies could be leveled at Star Trek 2009, but strangely enough, Clark doesn't realize this as he gushes about how fresh the whole thing looks and how the flashiness of the production rejuvenated the franchise. Well, right then and there, I'd say Mr. Clark was out of his fucking mind. Clark's views as a result of stuff like this feel shallow. His only two criticisms of the movie, which turn out to be major ones, symptomatic of J.J. Abrams' movies as a whole, don't stop him seeing this new film as a commercial and creative success the franchise needed. Really, just go back and look at the criticisms of Star Trek the Motion Picture and say with a straight face they can't be applied to the 2009 movie. There's also a huge amount of mistakes, both in referencing facts about films and TV as well as crediting people. Apparently, Bryan Singer at one point was working on bringing the franchise back with the help from someone called Meyer Burnett. Well, that's sort of true. I mean, I know Robert Meyer Burnett, but a Meyer Burnett escapes me. It does me, too. Is it another of Clark's obvious mistakes, or should I be calling you by your middle name, Rob? Did Clark bother to proofread the book? Did anyone at the publisher bother? It's pretty distracting after the first few mistakes turn up. The book is littered with them. He also amusingly states that his Star Trek 2009 coverage, that Alex Kurtzman is a diehard Star Trek fan, which for those who know of his involvement since the 2009 movie is hilarious but sad in its incorrectness. It was Bob Orsi that was the Star Trek fan. Looking at his Facebook page after picking up this book confirms Trek under Kurtzman has clouded his judgment as he praises Discovery. More rounded opinions and less factual mistakes could have made this a better book. Quite disappointing and all, but it makes me wonder something. In a previous letter, we both communicated about the idea of objective and subjective critiquing, with you saying critiquing is most definitely objective. I disagreed with you and felt it was both. Critiquing something requires you to tread a line and make sure not to stay on only one side for too long. Every movie critique has a feel, and it's about trying to tap into what it offers. That's why I previously brought up Generations as being both subjectively and objectively good. I think it's both subjectively and objectively bad, but okay. Different strokes. Criticism and praise can be equal. I can see the good things about it and the bad things. I subjectively see First Contact as terrible, yet objectively I can appreciate its merits. My question to you is about Mark Clark, not him specifically because I'm sure he thought he was doing a fair job, but about people like him who are taken in by what's new without having the courage or objectivity to see that not everything that is new is good. Do you think the praise given to Star Trek content under Alex Kurtzman is like that? This is a bit outside of my field, as I'm not shy about disliking something a large majority like. For instance, I can't force myself to like Blade Runner 2049 when the obvious problems with the movie stand out. Are people hopping onto bandwagons because something is new instead of objectively being compared? Are people that shallow they look for the next new thing until their attention turns until their attention turns their head towards something else? At what point does that person internally reconcile the similarities of their criticisms? Kind regards, Pedro. Interesting letter. Well, first of all, there's a lot of people. It's frustrating for OG imagination connoisseurs to listen to a lot of what passes for criticism today. Especially it is for me. I'm not going to sit there and toot my own horn. I mean, I do enough. I mean, this entire show is me tooting my own horn. But I've lived through what I would say was a very classic period of imagination connoisseur material. Starting all the way back to seeing things like Jaws in the theater. I mean, Jaws was the first of our major, over the last 46 years. Jaws was the first film that I saw first run in a theater that went on to become a bona fide classic of movies that I saw in the theater. And then 76, it was Logan's Run. And then 77, it was Star Wars and Close Encounters. And I saw all these things as an impressionable child. I know I was 8 when I saw Jaws for the first time, but I saw it in a big theater, so it had a real impression on me. And I was already a movie fan, so I read the movie reviews and the Sunday calendar section and the Friday calendar section. I was very much into movies. So it's really interesting. And also watching the original Star Trek in syndication throughout the 70s. So it's very interesting to listen to a lot of commentary about, especially today, about these things that I was there when they were new first run and what that all meant and to watch it all unfold, to watch the things that we love now as imagination connoisseurs in the Post-Geek singularity. Well, they weren't there. I mean, they didn't exist. So it was very fascinating to watch the science fiction and horror of the last 46 years come out and change the landscape. I mean, it's hard to explain to people what it was like to go to Alien for the first time. Because there had been movies like Alien before, Haunted House, Planet Mario Bava's Planet of the Vampires, but not really. If you watch Planet of the Vampires and Alien, it's a very different experience. But to watch a movie like Alien that had such verisimilitude and modern cutting edge special effects, there was nothing in the history of cinema that even came close to Alien. I saw Alien in the UA 150 theater on their giant screen. There was nothing like it. So if you were a fan of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and you went and saw Alien for the first time, the combination of it was overwhelming. I mean, you really felt like you were seeing something that no one had ever seen before because they hadn't. And so to have lived through those times and to be able to walk into a theater now, to walk into a theater then and to see something that overwhelming. The same was true of Star Wars, by the way. No one had ever seen anything close to a science fiction film far out, taking place on a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I cannot stress enough how strange it was watching Star Wars for the first time. And me as a kid who was eating up every sci-fi B-movie I could get my hands on, to go into that theater and see a wide 235, a Panavision image that was wide across the screen and watch the crawl, go into the background and then see the blockade runner being chased by the Star Destroyer. It was astonishing because no one had ever seen anything like that. I mean, now we just take all these images for granted because we've seen them in a million different movies. But imagine what it was like to go to a movie theater and literally see imagery that had never been seen before. There certainly were never visual effects like that. Fast, quick, laser blasts, robots, the way it was all presented. And it all had peak verisimilitude. Star Wars has peak verisimilitude. Like when you went onto a planet, it wasn't like you're on some painted backdrop on a set. They were filming in Tunisia, and they built, there's moisture evaporators, and there's land speeders, and there's sand people, and banthas, and crate dragon skulls, and spines. I mean, you're looking at this going, did they go on location to an alien planet to film this? I mean, it was incredible. It was incredible what was going on back in the day. And I think that now it's hard when you listen to criticism from people who, I mean, this stuff already existed. And I think about what have I seen in the last 30 years? I keep going back to, it's mostly two things. Jurassic Park blew me away when Jurassic Park opened, because no one had ever done photorealistic dinosaurs like that. When that Brachiosaur, the whole Sam Neill, when he does the glasses thing. I mean, I've said it before on the show, but I think everyone in the theater, the first time I saw it, I was like, I had never seen photorealistic dinosaurs. And the combination, the Tyrannosaurus, it was incredible. And the Matrix. And it wasn't just bullet time. It was the Chinese sword fighting brought into a science fiction context. Yen Wo-ping and his entire crew and everything that they'd done. I mean, it was amazing to watch. And that was another time when I'm like, I've never seen anything like this. Now it's par for the course. People are like, bullet time. It was used in every commercial for 5 years. So it's hard then when people go back and give criticism, and because they don't have the perspective. My favorite was, when Empire Strikes Back came out, there were not everyone liked it. There might have been critics you can read that had a dissenting view, but let me tell you, people loved The Empire Strikes Back when it came out. And I would sit here and listen to people tell me, well, Rob, the Empire 2 suffered criticism. No, it didn't. I mean, you can go find bad reviews of it, but I'm telling you that for fans and friends of mine and people, audiences, Empire Strikes Back was a revelation. And yet, I mean, I only know that because I was there. 26 times I was there, and it's a different world. So when people go back and when I read people's accounts, it doesn't sound like this guy who wrote this book did his due diligence, did a lot of scholarship there. But that's to be expected. I don't think people do a lot of there's not a lot of scholarship going on. This one comes from Sebastian. It's a downloadable letter. Let's see. This one from Sebastian. This is from Sebastian, although not Sebastian Stan, I'm afraid. Sebastian says, Dear RMB, after rewatching Captain America and the Winter Soldier, I spotted an alarming issue that needed raising with yourself and the PGS, prompting me to write my first letter to you. In the build-up to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, my girlfriend and I rewatched the Captain America trilogy, in part because she's obsessed with Sebastian Stan. Whilst watching arguably the best of the three, not only because of its fantastic action but great allegory against a surveillance state, we noticed that a scene very important to us was deleted from the movie on Disney+. Perhaps calling it a scene is a bit of a stretch, since it's really a few frames we're talking about, but since I was unable to find any information on this omission on Google, most likely because nobody has yet picked up on it, I wanted to bring it to the attention of the imagination connoisseurs. Strap in, Rob. It's about to get political. When Zola's computer brain is explaining Hydra's infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. to Cap and Black Widow, the original scene from the movie depicted many important historical events that were supposedly caused by Hydra in an attempt to secretly feed crisis and reap war. Amongst those was the appearance of Venezuelan former authoritarian president Hugo Chavez. You can imagine that whilst most people probably did not notice, as Venezuelans, this image stuck out to us the first time we watched it. Thus, upon our most recent rewatch, we were shocked to find it was no longer there. To make sure we were not going mad, we managed to find a clip of the original version on YouTube and confirmed that the frames were indeed removed. We found this extremely ironic considering that in this very scene, Zola tells our heroes that when history did not cooperate, history was changed, referring to how Hydra manipulated history to suit their needs. It appears that whichever member of the Disney hierarchy that approved of this censorship did just that. We were very bummed out after seeing this change. The destruction of Venezuela by Chavez and Maduro regimes in real life is well documented, but it was fun to think that in this fantasy world, we Venezuelans were victims of Hydra's elaborate plan, as weird as that may sound. Particularly when so much of the MCU's political commentary is specific to U.S. politics and agendas, it was nice to see my country's political situation somehow involved. As mentioned before, we couldn't find information on this and were left to speculate on the reasons. It could be that Disney simply wanted to avoid any overt political messages in a child-friendly platform. However, there are reasons to believe it may be something darker, as Bruce Wayne feared. C. Robert Cargill, a screenwriter for Doctor Strange, revealed that part of the reason the MCU portrayed the Ancient One as Celtic instead of Tibetan was to avoid any connection to that Tibetan sovereignty which could face repercussions from Chinese censors. It is the case that the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, and the Kremlin have deep ties to the Venezuelan regime. It wouldn't surprise me if Disney chose to remove scenes from their content that could lead to problems down the road as they continue to expand Disney Plus into Asian markets in 2021. If this sounds conspiratorial, and granted it is just speculation in this particular case, consider Disney's other previous actions surrounding China. Mulan was filmed in the Xinjiang province of China, where crimes against humanity are currently being carried out by the Uyghur Muslims. Yet Disney thanked the security forces responsible for said crimes in the credits of Mulan. It is crazy to think that Disney fired Gina Carano for a social media post that could be interpreted as trying to minimize what happened in concentration camps of World War II, but had no problem defending the security agency that currently puts people in concentration camps. I understand that, as you always say, Rob, it ain't show friends, it's show business, and ultimately Disney is just looking out for its shareholders and profits. China is just too important a market, and the regime has too much power in controlling what can and cannot be shown. But this type of censorship by China of large corporations using economic muscle is concerning and is something we should all think about, even in the West, where the effects are starting to be felt. This is not exclusive to Disney, since the NBA ran into trouble when the Houston Rockets manager defended Hong Kong pro-democracy protesters, and the NBA were forced to publicly regret his statements. My own football club, Arsenal FC, turned on one of our Muslim players who tweeted condemning Chinese crimes against the Uyghurs. Clearly, this problem is far and wide and has no obvious solution. Dealing with these issues will be difficult, and unfortunately, we can't expect companies to act always altruistically. I want to explicitly clarify that my grievances are against the totalitarian regimes themselves and not the countries or peoples that they rule. My specific concern in this letter is how stories may be altered or future stories potentially not be told over fear of offending the sensibilities of a particular totalitarian regime. As Steve Rogers expresses in the film, the price of freedom is high, it always has been. I hope we don't lose these stories, and that is a price that the storytellers are always willing to pay. All the best, Rob. Sebastian. Dude, I had no idea that that is, in fact, the case. Did not know that. I want to go back and look, but you're absolutely right. Look, obviously, there is, as Americans, we want to stand up for truth, justice, the American way, freedom, lack of oppression for all peoples. But on the other hand, we also are capitalists, and it's a conundrum. What do you do? What do you do? I mean, I think most people are going to err on the side of making money. China is an interesting case. It kind of opened up It's capitalism under a communist system of government. China likes its money too, and they're doing all kinds of things to kick our ass around the world. We have, like I've said before, we've ceded Africa and parts of Europe to China, who are more than happy to bring in their enormous wealth, set up infrastructure projects. I mean, we let Africa go. America let Africa go, and you'd think we would learn our lesson. But the Chinese, we basically ceded the entire African continent to the Chinese. Hey, as Willow pointed out the other day, the Chinese are as racist as we are against our black brothers and sisters, but that didn't stop them from going into Africa and setting up shop, getting their mineral rights for, hey, we're going to build you infrastructure and give you cars and buildings and all of our technology. We just want all of the mineral rights to your country, all the real wealth that your country has. We're going to take it. And of course, you have a lot of poor countries in Africa that were more than willing to give over their what mineral rights. We don't have the infrastructure to utilize those rights to exploit across the world stage, so why not take them off our hands? We let that happen. With China, it's an interesting case. It's an interesting case how Americans, like so many things, we all have our price. We're all whores that we can be bought for. It doesn't matter. At some point, you're going to give up your values and you're going to get paid. And it's kind of a bummer. But a great letter. I did not know that. I'm now curious if on the Blu-rays they made that alteration as well. And when you found it on YouTube, did someone else notice this, or was this something, because I've never heard about that? I really like that idea. Oh, here's a good name. Ulysses Jason Newcomb. Hi, Rob. Thanks for the show. I have a thought I'd like to share with you. I believe that humans are inherently meaning-seeking creatures, or meaning-making, depending on your perspective. Actually, when I was at the Evergreen State College, I took an entire coordinated studies program called The Making of Meaning. When I look at people lining up to buy a ticket to a movie, I see faithfuls lining up for communion with meaningful stories. Oh, I think you're absolutely right. I like that. When I see them buy a ticket, I see them tithing to an institution in exchange for stewardship of these stories. Oh, I like that too. When I see them dress up as their favorite characters, I see an echo of shamanic channelings of spirits. Shamanic, as that would be the right. We tend to think our world has become secular, but it seems to me that where the church used to have an organ and stained glass, now it has hi-fi audio and an IMAX screen. Seen this way, it makes perfect sense why fans would be upset when studios frig with their classic stories too much. Best of luck with it all. Ulysses. I like that. I like the way I agree. I mean, what is religion? Religion is supposed to provide a framework with which to live your life in an effective manner, where you can be a human being that can communicate with your fellow mankind, and lead a progressive and thoughtful and well-lived life. It also allows you to, it gives you hope, or it gives you faith in a higher power, so you know that you're not the center of the universe. There is something always greater, and it's something that you should be mindful of. I get all that. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, whether we call it morality or ethics, everyone's still looking. I mean, really, when you think about it, as much as I detest the way cancel culture goes about all of the things, and people that do take glee, I think one of the components of cancel culture is that people feel much better when they cancel somebody because they perceive that they've done right, or they've done something the world needed, which is to get rid of this person off the stage. And they're doing that because they really believe they've made the world a better place, even though the very act of what it is they've done is monstrous, and they've defeated the purpose of whatever. And also the idea that we need to be, I find the idea that humanity, we have to get rid of all of the things that make us uncomfortable is absurd. Like I said, life's uncomfortable. Life is hard. Life sucks, but it's also great. It's great to be alive. How long are you here? A very finite period of time. Why are you all bummed out? What are you mad about? Why are you bitching and moaning and complaining? Go out and do something. Always go forward. Make something happen. A lot of people don't. But I think you're right about that. I mean, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for meaning. You know, God's abandoned us too many times in our lives. So it comes down to the fact that, you know what doesn't abandon us? Good storytelling. You know, people that can quantify, even if it's about Captain America and the Winter Soldier, you watch a good story, it makes you feel good. Especially because ultimately those people embody the spirit of what it is you hope to grow up to be one day. good people with a life well lived, and have people that you love and people that love you. I mean, there's not a lot to it, but I like that. I think you might be right. I mean, that's certainly what why did you become an imagination connoisseur? Because all the things that you love, the flights of fancy, make you feel better, make you feel like your life is enriched somehow by all of this. I think, yeah, which is good. What a good letter. Thanks for writing in. This one comes from Kedst, Kedst, K-E-D-S-T, Kedst1. I like that, Kedst. Rob, you have a great forum. You've done a lot to get me through this COVID-enforced lifestyle. I've written to you a couple of short questions in the past, and have always encouraged you to continue your well-thought-out complaints against Bad Robot and Secret Hideout's desecration of Star Trek. Don't worry, I'll continue. I came to your channel via Midnight's Edge mention of you in respect to your discussions with them in respect to all things Star Trek. Like you, I grew up with Star Trek as a child in the 70s. I had the Constitution class model that my brother and I waited forever to be in stock at our local hobby shop. We couldn't keep those damn nacelles in place just right. The same thing went for the D7. I'm one of those nuts that can recite the dialogue from Wrath of Khan front to back. Yes, even the pre-departure checks and diagnostic dialogue that is going on in the background as McCoy and Kirk walk onto the bridge just before the training cruise. Oh, you're my kind of people. We certainly park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. I have the technical manuals and Ships of Fleet books sitting on my desk. I was fortunate enough to have been in Augusta, Georgia, visiting my sister back in '89, I believe, when we happened to hear that James Doohan was going to be at the local convention center. We could not wait to get there. It was a great event. He started the show by saying, "Star Trek V, what the hell was that?" He was so enjoyable. I was able to get him to autograph a couple of the books I bought at the show. Those are the only autographs I ever attempted to obtain, and they're all technical manuals. It was an honor to meet the actor that would eventually shape my vocation. Had I not finished college yet at the time, I had not finished college yet at the time, and was not completely aware of myself at that point, so I could not yet tell him that I would become an IT professional because of the character he played. It was an honor and even more of a thrill to have been able to spend a few minutes talking to a person that had played such a huge role in my life from afar. I was turned on to comic books by my older brother's interest in collecting them. When our parents went out of town, we would always count on an oversized comic book as a surprise gift when they returned. I can remember the Fantastic Four Treasury Edition, retelling the early Fantastic Four adventures and the Justice Society story reprints. I started collecting myself and had some classics like X-Men 100, which I traded away when I was 12 years old for Human Torch 1. I was in love with the Torch due to the Vision origin story that started in Avengers 131, giant-sized Avengers 1 and 2, and a few of the other main titles. That storyline captivated me as a 10-year-old in 1975. Needless to say, I have many pop culture loves with you and the rest of the Post-Geek singularity. I was also a pretty good athlete. I've played and still play baseball. No, not softball, baseball. I played football, and remarkably, being a 5'11" 7th grader, I didn't play basketball until I was 14 and over 6 feet tall by then. I was a high-level athlete in pretty much every sport I played. I was also an honor student until my last couple of years of high school when I discovered that girls like guys as much as guys like girls. Yay. All I've written to this point is to enable you to get an idea of who I am and the things we may have in common. What I have not mentioned is that I'm an African American. I mention this due to a lot of the conversations that have occurred over the last week in respect to the on-the-noseness of the latest installment of The Falcon and the Snowman. The Winter Soldier. I'll get to it. I am befuddled by the complaints of the scene where the Falcon is profiled by the police. In my adult life, I've had this happen to me twice. When I see that on screen, I have an emotional reaction of recognition and frustration of the moment when it happened to me. That this happens is real, and it simply grounds the story. I cannot say what motivates people to take exception to this scene. It's just another moment of the MCU creators creating real moments to which I can personally relate, as I have many times over, regardless of the race of the character. As a minority, it is a day-to-day requirement to empathize with the problems of people that do not look or sound like me. I do not see anything wrong with that. So why is it such a big problem having things the other way? I was once surrounded by police a minute away from my house at 2:30 in the morning after having driven like a nut for over 13 hours from Florida to my home in Pittsburgh. Oh man, I love Pittsburgh, George Romero country. At this time in my life, I'd been working in my profession for 5 to 6 years. I was rushing to get my dog home after having picked him up from my mother's place in Raleigh. The dog was 18 at the time, and we believe he'd gone blind while he was staying with my mother. Just the ravages of age. I was frantic to get him home because he'd been yelping since the next to last night he'd stayed with my mother. The hope was that once he was back in familiar surroundings, he would calm down. Needless to say, I was further distressed when I was less than a minute away from my house and then suddenly pulled over by the police. I was tired from the drive also. Long story short, I explained to the officer that I was coming home from vacation with my dog and explained the situation with the dog to him. The first retort by the officer was, "Dogs are usually dead by that age," directly questioning the veracity of the story. This enraged me. Teddy, my dog, was like a son to me. But thanks to my father's impeccable ability to argue facts and Mr. Spock's influence on my life, I was able to maintain control of myself and reiterate my story. Eventually, I was surrounded by 3 police cars. One officer began screaming at me at one point. The combination of the officers not believing my statements, the officer yelling at me and other officers shining lights in my face and the car, the thought occurred to me that these officers could do anything they liked to me. At that point, I decided to stop arguing the truth of the matter and instead shut up and just say, "Yes, sir," to any questions and kept my hands on the steering wheel. Eventually, the officer that pulled me over gave me back my license. The other officers sped off as they ignored my request for the reason of pulling me over. Next month, I had another very similar run-in with the police. The reason for this long-winded statement is to reiterate that these things are real. I say this not to imply people do not think that they're not real, but to say that the creators of the show are adding realism to the show by exposing the challenges that one of its characters faces. This is no different than the decades of problems characterized in entertainment before there was any prevalent, realistic expression of problems unique to minorities. Sometimes I may laugh at those problems and say, "Try spending a while in my shoes." But I do not dismiss the portrayals or find issue with them as part of building a story. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but the only people that are complaining are people that do not suffer from these types of issues. I think some of the negative reactions are due to the far-reaching issues in our culture where we've become addicted to instant gratification in every aspect of our lives to such a degree that when we encounter something that does not please us or does not create a narrative with which we're comfortable, we errantly come to the conclusion that there is something fundamentally wrong with whatever it is we're presented. Self-analysis and self-critiquing are a thing of the past. Cognitive dissonance is the call of the day. Maybe I'm indulging in it now. As I watch a commercial for The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, I just think the show is another great achievement for Marvel Studios and another feather in the cap of Kevin Feige. Yes, they've had their failures, we all do. Just so you know, the next person I see walking on water, well, I'll follow that person to the gates of hell. Sorry for such a long letter, Rob. Again, thanks for all you do. You do a great service for the PGS. Kedsit1. Again, fantastic letter. And you and I, we really do park our shuttlecrafts in the same shuttle bay. You know, it's always interesting. Like, I have loved Falcon and the Winter Soldier on a number of levels. And to me, that scene, it worked a lot of different ways. I mean, clearly that neighborhood was kind of a shithole. Why there were cops in it at all, you know, I'd be like, hey, okay, at least they're patrolling. But I thought it served, you know, a purpose. They're going out of their way. Like Sam Wilson, ultimately, forget the fact that he's Falcon, and every time we've met him, he's this noble guy. You know, he had a meet cute with Captain America on the running field, and he was the first person that Cap heard when Thanos unsnapped everybody and the portals opened. He's an important character of the MCU, and I think Anthony Mackie is just crushing it as that character, and he's really being given a chance to shine. But the idea to think that any person in America who's black, it doesn't matter who you are, simply by being black, the cops are going to stop you or whatever. And then when they do stop you, like yourself, you're just going home and you want to get your dog home because you're wondering if your dog's blind. And that's all you're trying to do. But because it's 2 o'clock in the morning, it didn't say, apparently you didn't say in the story they gave you a ticket or anything. So you didn't do anything wrong. You were profiled because you were black. I mean, and the cop stopped you. And in his mind, you already had done something wrong because, let's face it, I mean, the police, they deal with, there's a reason why there's so much incarceration of black Americans in an inordinately large amount than say white people. Why? Because black Americans have never been treated equally under our, in our culture. And it just is. And you know that. I don't have to tell you. But the world wants to believe, I think, no, we have equal rights. Everybody's equal under the law. No way. And you see that every day and you just experience it. You explain the story. It's real and it happens all the time. And until we can have conversations about it and until we can talk about this kind of thing openly, as a matter of fact, we are. I mean, this is what the BLM, it's all a part of it. It's like, yo, okay, we're 15% of the population, but do you have to treat us this way? Can we not? I mean, most of us are just normal, everyday people, just like you. We just happen to have black skin. I thought Falcon and Winter Soldier did a really good idea, a good job that you know, you're seeing, you're subtly being given a message of awareness. Like, oh, look, here's a brother and sister that are hardworking people. One's an Avenger, one's a single mom. They're trying to run a business together, and they get denied a loan. Now, like any good science fiction show does, allegorically, they say, well, because the snap happened, you know, half the people in the world have come back, so it's really hard to get a loan. But the idea, and they knew it too, Sam knew it too, that if they were white, they might have got that loan. And I think it's important. I think that's how you weave in. I don't think it's banging. You're not, sure, is it subtle? Well, it could probably be more, but then it is the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. You have to tell the story so people, the meaning is conveyed. I think it was really good. I think they did a good job. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. And I think you're absolutely right. I love your letter. That stuff happens. It happens. You know, why can't we discuss it? I don't know. Omar 94 writes in and says, hi, Rob, moderators in the Post-Geek Singularity. There's something you guys can tell me about since I'm not sure about it. Something I've always wondered about sports films is whether that is a film genre. What I mean is, when watching a sports film, I always feel like while the sport is an integral role in the story, it's not the main genre of the film. Rocky is called a sports film, and while there's boxing in it, I always thought it was more of a drama. Field of Dreams is about baseball, yes, but I always thought it was more of a fantasy drama. Jerry Maguire is one I'm mixed on about whether it's a sports film, since it's not really about a sport, despite football being in it. It's more of a romantic comedy drama. Those are just some examples where I question whether sports films are a real genre. As I said earlier, this is something you guys can tell me since I don't know how I feel about it. Thanks and live long and prosper. Well, I think, Omar, sports films are a genre unto themselves. I mean, most sports films are metaphors for larger issues of humanity. Hell, the very act of making a movie about any sport at all is turning the sport itself into something metaphoric. But there are sports films. Oliver Stone's Any Given Sunday is absolutely all about football. It's about a lot of other things, but it's about football. I don't see Field of Dreams as being about... I don't think of Field of Dreams as being a baseball movie. Baseball's a part of it. I see it as a fantasy film. I've never seen it as a baseball movie. But movies like North Dallas 40, movies about like The Natural, or Bull Durham. You know, Bull Durham could be like considered a romantic comedy, but it's very much about the game of baseball and everything that goes along with it, the Americana of it, the romance of it. It's very much a sports movie. When I think a movie that gets into both the mechanics and the meaning of sports, I think you would definitely call those things sports movies. I think Jerry Maguire is, you call it a romantic comedy. It is that, but it's very much about sports as well, because not necessarily about one sport, but about the commercialization of sports. What does it all mean? And I think it definitely delves into that. So I would say that something like Jerry Maguire is a sports movie, because it does deal with one aspect of the sports as a business, which is the agency side. Moneyball is, you could look at it as a movie about economics, but it's absolutely a movie about baseball in America today and what it all means. So I think, yes, to answer your question, there is a sports movie genre, but not all movies that have sports in them are sports movies, if that makes any sense. But thank you for writing in. Let's see. This comes from Ash Chauhan. Ash writes in, hello, Rob, and hello to the viewers of Robservations. I hope everything and everyone is enjoying. I hope everyone's enjoying their day today. I'm sorry. I've written before about my thoughts about the Burton-Schumacher era of Batman films. I've come to appreciate some of the films that were maligned, and have come to conclude that some of the films that were acclaimed are rather mediocre in hindsight. I guess time has a special way for us to appreciate and take a second look at things. None more so than my eye-popping reconsideration of Batman and Robin. I've come to the stark realization that Batman and Robin is, quite frankly, the best Batman film from the Burton-Schumacher era. Yes, the film that has been trashed into oblivion for the better part of nearly a quarter century since its release has many great qualities that usurp any and all celebratory nostalgia for Tim Burton's reign, as well as the existential examination that was Joel Schumacher's Batman Forever. These films can only hope to claim the great symbolic artistry that is Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin. Looking at Batman and Robin from an objective point of view, and not from the dog-piled cesspool of pungent fecal matter it has become in the last 24 years, one can come to the exact same conclusion as I did, and see the greatness that was, is, and will always be Batman and Robin. George Clooney is one of our finest actors today. The Oscar-winning thespian, a multi-talented writer, director, and producer, was cast as Bruce Wayne Batman by Joel Schumacher when Val Kilmer dropped out of the sequel. Seeing his greatness before anyone else did, Schumacher allowed Clooney to play the role of Batman and Bruce Wayne without any limitations. No fancy voice modulation, no change in gait, no need to become an intimidating Batman. Clooney played Batman as just that, a bat and a man. Just like how a bat quivers in nature, Clooney incorporated the movements of bats in nature into his performance. From an angsty stance to a feverishly twitchy head, Clooney mimicked the movements of bats in nature for his great performance. Just like how Todd McFarlane was hailed by comic book aficionados for drawing Spider-Man in angular poses, mimicking that of a spider, Clooney's iconic performance did the same with treating Batman as a bat. Not only did Clooney put the bat in Batman, but he also, through the help of wonderfully sculpted and amazingly accurate body armor, was able to put the man in Batman as well. The wonderfully detailed nipples, the wide raised knobs acting as areolas, and pencil eraser-tipped nipples further accentuated the manly physique of Clooney's Batman. These intricate details of the batsuit were a conscious choice, made to do one thing: intimidate criminals. No criminal in their right mind would attempt to attack a Batman with bulging abs and tight pecs. This is something that the Nolan films failed to do. No one was intimidated by a Batman whose batsuit looked like Legos glued to a wetsuit. An often misguided and derided costuming choice, Schumacher's creative choices laid the groundwork for the themes of masculinity peppered throughout the film. From casting the alpha male incarnate that is Arnold Schwarzenegger as the villainous Mr. Freeze, the simple, crisp verbal enunciation by the cast when referring to Freeze as Mr. Freeze, a tribute to Freeze's masculine authority, Mr. Freeze's phallic-shaped rocket in the opening scene, and his freezing engine that glazes Gotham City into a thick cube of ice. Batman and Robin is a film about men and the relationships they share with the world and with each other. This is further explored with a subplot involving Alfred, Bruce Wayne's surrogate father, dying from a disease, and Bruce Wayne Dick Grayson's surrogate father, finding his relationship with his surrogate son dying from a lack of trust and jealousy. The name Dick Grayson is also symbolic of his chiding of Bruce Wayne's paternalistic leanings. If we were to split Dick Grayson's name into three distinct parts, Dick, Gray, Son, we can further understand the themes this film presents. The first name of Dick is a euphemism for the penis, symbolizing masculinity. His last name of Grayson can be split into two symbolic parts. Gray for the gray area that Dick inhabits as Bruce's ward, and Son, what Bruce sees in Dick. This aspect of this aspect of Dick Grayson's name is rather overlooked, yet deeply symbolic. Yet deeply symbolic artistic touch emphasized by the themes in the main story. The only way for the film's generational depiction of fatherhood to be saved is for the conflicts to become directly addressed, as they are in the film. The ending of the film is a celebration of masculinity, as fatherhood rejoices when Alfred is saved, Bruce and Dick's relationship is salvaged, and Mr. Freeze has an epiphany that turns the villain into a hero, eschewing any and all toxic masculinity. The themes of manhood might be off-putting and unrelatable to many, especially the female fans, but Batman and Robin also celebrates femininity as much as it does masculinity. The toxic masculinity depicted by Dr. Jason Woodrue, played by the great John Glover, was a prescient subplot about today's concerns about toxic masculinity. The character of Dr. Woodrue represents the oppressive nature of men who attempt to silence their female associates by abusing their agency with wicked deeds. The symbolism is further realized when Woodrue invents a super steroid called Venom, creates a juiced underling named Bane, and tosses toxic chemicals into Uma Thurman's Dr. Pamela Isley, killing her in the process. Woodrue is a walking symbol of societal poison and literal toxic masculinity. Venom, Bane, and toxic chemicals. These are the three things that Woodrue associates himself with. He uses his agency to silence Dr. Pamela Isley, only to cause her to rise quite literally as a reborn Poison Ivy. Upon her resurrection, Poison Ivy gives Woodrue his much-deserved comeuppance. Symbolically, this scene further adds to the theme of righteous femininity winning out over toxic masculinity. Also, when Alicia Silverstone's Barbara Wilson discovers that her uncle is Batman's main confidant and has designed a batsuit in anticipation of her figuring this factoid out, Wilson tells Alfred, "Suit me up, Uncle Alfred." But we never see Alfred suit her up. She suits herself up. A simple symbol of her growing into the role of a hero without the aid of any man and becoming Batman's female equivalent. Batgirl. Batman and Robin was a film before its time. Audiences in 1997 did not fully understand or appreciate its greatness. Had Batman and Robin been released today, it would have grossed $1 billion worldwide. Batman and Robin has many of the tropes that make Marvel Studios films a prime commodity now. Familiar Marvel tropes such as multiple supporting costume heroes aiding the protagonist in battle, references to other superheroes such as Superman, thus implying a greater interconnected comic book universe, one-off villains that pose no stakes, a lighthearted family tone, and a slam-bang third act. Batman and Robin is a masterpiece that utilized the successful Hollywood tropes of today and examined in great detail the societal issues of our current time. When viewed through this lens, Batman and Robin goes from putrid to prescient personification of present-day motion picture proliferation. If Nostradamus was a film, he would be Batman and Robin. Much like how the years have been kind to Ridley Scott's Blade Runner, Batman and Robin deserves a second look. for it too is heading down the slow path to becoming a much studied and culturally appreciated classic like Blade Runner. And just like Blade Runner, with its heavily analyzed motifs such as close-ups of eyes that confound viewers and made for great critical analysis on the nature of humanity, the close-up shots of Batman and Robin's molded rubber codpieces and buttocks will be viewed as integral film school analysis about the presentation of masculinity on film. There's a lot we can learn from Batman and Robin. I only ask that we all approach it with an open mind and see the film for what it is, a masterclass of symbolism. Batman and Robin is not just a great comic book film. It is a great film. Period. Oh, one more thing about Batman and Robin. April Fools! Batman and Robin is trash. The film is so bad it's good. Sorry for wasting your time. Hope you and the viewers were amused by all of this reaching about a 24-year-old movie, as is the case today with many revisionist articles and decades-old films when viewed through the scrutinizing lens of today. Much love and appreciation to you, Rob, and the Burnettwork for entertaining this April Fool's prank, though writing all of this has made me reconsider Batman and Robin as a great film. Actually, no, it hasn't. Have a wonderful day. P.S. But seriously, Mr. Freeze's hockey team from hell with their dreads, skull masks, and razor blade hockey sticks was pretty metal, right? So metal. I'm sorry, Ash. I'm sorry that I blew your joke with a case of the giggles, but it was pretty hilarious. I don't know why I lost it, man, but congratulations for that. That was good. That was good. Let's see what you guys are saying. I have no idea what you're saying, but we're going to find out together. We're going to jump on this and see what's happening here. Man, that was funny. You were cracking me up, Ash. I could barely. I was gonna. I was losing it. I was losing it. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, Rob, I was the one who made you spend dollars on Sucker Punch after reading my text. What is your opinion about the film, specifically the high roller and baby doll scene? I don't remember the exact scene because I've only seen it once. This scene had to be removed, otherwise it would no longer be shown in theaters as PG-13. You know what? I thought Sucker Punch was fun to watch, but I thought it was a glorious mess. But I only saw it once. I did buy the soundtrack record, and I did buy 2 of the hot toys. I did buy a baby doll hot toy. You know what? I got to take it down and put it out here. Like, I got to put it up on the samurai shelf because she's a girl with swords, and I think that would be fun. Why not put baby doll there? You know what? Maybe I'll do that. It's a good idea. I'm going to tell you, after we do King Kong or Godzilla versus King Kong, the Ace and I are going to do the extended cut of Sucker Punch for whining about movies because she hasn't seen it. So then Dakota says, and out of curiosity, I guess Dakota was anonymous. And out of curiosity, how many of your sci-fi script writers for today's shows would appear at comic conventions without being paid? But showing up as a fan, if a screenwriter wants to write about sci-fi and fantasy, should they at least be a fan of the sci-fi? First of all, I do know a lot of, especially TV writers, a lot of the people that I know that are writing science fiction films and stuff and shows go to Comic-Con. They go to Comic-Con without being paid because they've been going there anyway. I think the ones that are good. And I know a lot of them. I know a lot of really talented. I have to say, you know, having just worked on Dota, Dragon's Blood, both Ashley Miller and Steve Melching are 2 of the best screenwriters I know. And I think the writing on the show is quite good. And I think a lot of great TV writers, Ted Sullivan, who I had a beef with on Twitter, who was on Discovery, I went up to him at a party at Comic-Con and we talked and introduced myself. We had a great conversation. He was there. I mean, I think most people that live in Los Angeles that work in the genre have been to Comic-Con. They like going. But I don't know, you know, Akiva Goldsman doesn't go for free. I'll tell you that. He gets paid. So I think, you know, one of the problems that I have with Star Trek Discovery is that clearly the people writing that show are not familiar with science fiction as a literary genre. And it's I think that's really problematic. And you can see it in the stories that are being told. I think it's problematic. Willow says, I haven't seen Godzilla versus Kong yet, but given your sarcastic tweet, I'm guessing that Godzilla comes out on top. Hashtag Team Godzilla. No, I'll tell you something. Godzilla was a supporting character in King Kong's movie. And I was kind of bummed out about that. And maybe it's just the way it was presented, but Godzilla was not the star of this movie. Godzilla was, I wouldn't say he's actually jobbed, but he's not the star of the movie. King Kong is, and that bothered me. My man Jordy Lyons sent in, a super chat. Thanks, Jordy. No question. Maybe you forgot. But maybe just sending a super chat. Thank you. Stub McShave says, I saw that Paul Simon had all of his solo songs and Simon and Garfunkel songs. I saw that Paul Simon had sold all of his solo songs and Simon and Garfunkel songs to Sony Music Publishing, which is owned by Sony Entertainment. Do you think that will lead to a lot of Paul Simon songs in upcoming Sony movies since they already own the rights? Very possibly. You know, I mean, if you got a great back catalog, you know, sell the rights to your stuff before you die. You have money, I guess you can leave to your next of kin, and you can enjoy it. I think if you have that kind of a back catalog, Simon and Garfunkel and Paul Simon, that's a great legacy, and at least they'll exploit it. Louis Terrazas said, but I think to answer your question, yeah, now that Sony owns it, it's going to be easier to put those into the movie. But they'll still have to pay. They're not going to. You don't get them for free. You want to put something in a movie, you're going to have to pay Sony Music Publishing. Get that cheddar out. Louis Terrazas says, yo, I knew it. Godzilla vs. Kong was incredible. I was waiting years for this, and it was akin to riding the craziest roller coaster ever. Next movie is all monsters. I didn't love it as much as you did. I don't know if they're going to make another one, but I did think the battles were incredible. Visual effects were incredible. I thought it was great. So I'm glad you liked it, but I want to wait to talk about it on Whining About Movies because I want to talk about it with Elizabeth. But I'm glad you liked it. The battles were totally cool, weren't they? I mean, really impressive monster battles. I would like to have seen a little bit more city destruction, but hey, the effects were incredible. It was amazing. Anthony D sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, I just finished reading The Sparrow after you recommended it a couple of months back. I love it when people read books that I recommend on the show. Wow, what a build-up and what a crushing crescendo in those last few chapters. I'm left with my jaw on the floor. Question, what actors do you picture as the cast? Ooh. I'm going to disappoint you. I know you tipped me here, and I don't know. I honestly, I never think in terms of casting when I on those kinds of things, and they could go either way. It depends how they want to go, and it's hard. Like, it's hard for me to say because even when I'm working on something, I don't like, and I'll tell you something, I don't like to picture certain people in roles, because then it limits your ability to see others come in. Here's the thing. Like when I'm working on a project, whether it's a movie I'm producing or hopefully directing or a TV show like Femme Fatales, one of my favorite parts is casting. It's also the most frustrating because you have no control over it. I mean, you have control over who you bring in, and what you want, I think what any producer or executive or director wants when they're casting for a project is they want somebody to leap up at them. Like normally when you have a whole day-long casting session, most of the people they deliver the lines as they are written. But they don't deliver the lines as the character would say them within the story. And what I mean by that is it's the difference between being knowing how to read and being literate. And acting, great actors have that gift. They have the gift to read something and they're like, okay, I get this. Even if they don't know the whole story, they've only been given sides, a couple of pages, they can infer what the meaning is and they can bring you a performance that leaps off the page where suddenly you're like, oh my God, there's a real character. There's that character. That said, the script that I read you a page of, I'm having it storyboarded with very specific actors in the roles. Like, I know exactly who I want to play Emil Zacharias in my head. I know exactly where I want to play that. And if we ever get to the point where it's financed and I can get it out there, get it made, there are the 3 lead actors. I already know who they are, who I want them to be. Now then, of course, you have to go after them, but I think they would do it too if I had the money. But so I don't know. I don't know. I just know that book, I'm glad you had the response to the book that you did, because, and you know what, to be honest, I've read that book a long time ago. I'd have to go back in and really reread it again to answer the question, but I'm glad. It just gives me great pleasure that you liked the book. And I can't wait to see the show. I don't know I wonder if they've cast anyone. Let's see, have they? I don't know. Let's see if they have that. No, it doesn't really look like it. It only talks about these sparrows for the 3rd season of the Umbrella Academy. But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'd have to think about it and get back to you. Stubble McShave says, I thought about the Black Adam movie that's coming. It's pretty funny that there's basically no trace of the DCEU left of what was there when the movie was announced all those years ago. I know, it's kind of interesting, right? It's kind of interesting. So we'll see. Benjamin23 sends in a super chat. You know what, though? Aquaman is still the vestige of the DCEU. Wonder Woman is. I mean, they're all part of Zack Snyder's vision. They're still here. The Flash, Ezra Miller is. So now Hot Toys is going to make a cyborg. So it's still there. It's just not as interconnected as perhaps it should be. But it's still there. You could say it's still there. Benjamin23 says, Rob, my area of Ontario is back into another 28-day lockdown, which means no movies, no Godzilla vs. Kong. Would you watch it on TV or wait for theaters to reopen? It seems an ideal theater movie. I cannot tell a lie. I watch it on HBO. I did. I just, ultimately, I'm not vaccinated. I can get vaccinated now. I got to figure out a way. There was no appointments. I can't, I just don't want to risk it. I mean, I've been pretty duly diligent staying home. So I just want to get vaccinated. But, I still liked it. Med6814 says, have you brought back Black Phillip yet? I don't even know how to bring back Black Phillip. Yeah. So I who can bring back Black Phillip? Bring him back. That's what I say. Bring him back. I like Black Phillip. Nick Markins sends in a super chat and says, Rob, I just got the movie Battle Royale on Blu-ray. Bro. Arrow is releasing a massive Battle Royale box set this month. It's coming out within days. You must get it. Nick Markins goes on to say, Rob, I just got the movie Battle Royale on Blu-ray. I hadn't seen it in years and not on Netflix anymore. I know you like this movie, but what are your thoughts on the Japanese film Battle Royale? I love Battle Royale. I think it's kind of a masterpiece. For those of you who don't know what Battle Royale is about, and if you don't, shame on you. How can you be an imagination connoisseur and not know what Battle Royale is about? Battle Royale is an early aughts. Early aughts, let's see, what year? 2001, maybe? Let's find out. Battle Royale film, 2000. It's 2000. Oh, I was off by a year. So for those of you who don't know, Battle Royale takes place in I guess you'd say a slightly futuristic Japan, where because the youth has become so unruly, and when you watch it now, it's your junior high. It's set with a junior high class. So in my middle school class, but junior high, to me, I thought it was always ninth graders, so like 14-year-olds. And once a year, the Japanese government picks a class, a middle school class, random or whatever, you don't know, and takes them to participate in Battle Royale, where they all are put on an island and given survival stuff, and they have to battle it out until there's one left standing. And which is great. And yet at the same time, while they're all trying to kill each other and create alliances and band together and survive, all the stuff that happens, all the teenage angst bubbles to the top, and it is incredibly violent, and it is hilarious. It is very much a dark, dystopian satire in a way, and it satires it sends up a lot of things, and it's beautifully made. It was directed by Kenji Fukasaku, who did like the Japanese sequences in Tora Tora Tora, but he did like Battles Without Honor and Humanity, that whole series. One of the great Japanese film directors. It was the last film he directed before he passed away. It's amazing, and it pulls no punches, and I love Battle Royale. I cannot wait to get that Arrow box set. Arrow's the name of the label that's releasing it. Nick Parrish says, "What's up, Rob? So yesterday, after I predicted Godzilla versus Kong would have a 5-day weekend over 55 million, and you took the under, you asked, what are we betting? Well, if you're right, I will leave a $10 super chat. The 9.6 million Wednesday is helping my case, though. You're right, Nick. It could be more. Could be more. I can send you back that. But yeah, I can. If I lose, I'm happy to pay it. Happy to pay it. But yeah, pretty crazy. 487 Sean Tower sends in a super chat. Thank you, sir. Robert, your hubris and ignorance of the great land grab in Africa by China is stunning. Most of China's finances are leveraged 30-1. They're in bed with Wall Street and world banks. America did not let anything happen. Well, I don't know about that. We didn't do it. I mean, maybe what you're saying that we're loaning money to the Chinese. To be honest, you're right. I am ignorant of the. I don't know about hubris, but I was reading an article about it just last week about what China was doing, and I was unaware of it. I was unaware of the infrastructure projects that they're building. I was not just in Africa, but also in Europe as well. And there's a lot going on there, but of course, everybody's in bed with Wall Street and the world banks, but we didn't stop it from happening. But admittedly, I don't know as much about it as I should. It's not something that I don't know. Also, Rob, America does not hold a candle to China on racism. America is one of the least racist places on earth. The racist America is old and tired. I agree with you. Will Yang probably agrees with you too. But the fact is, we're still racist. And while we might be less racist than some places, and I think we are, I think America, we're still racist, and we have a legacy of racism we have yet to properly deal with. But I don't disagree with you. But that doesn't change the fact that we have racial issues in this country. Whether we're racist or more racist or less racist, the point is we have to deal with our racism that we still have in our country. And, it's still here. It's still here. And what are we going to do about it? But yes, I don't want to ever get into a comparing and contrasting our racism to, say, Asian countries. Hell, I've heard Asian people my whole life talk about that the Chinese hate the Japanese hate the Chinese. I mean, after what the Japanese did to the Chinese in World War II, I don't blame them. The rape of Nanking. I mean, yes, some of the most racist people I've ever heard on earth are Asian people, but they're racist against one another. It's always amused me because, of course, my own perception is that growing up, I just have this general love of all things Asian, but to me that in itself is racist because I just group everybody into one thing. Like Asian, I'm not Asian, I'm Vietnamese. I'm not Asian, I'm from Indonesia. I'm from India. I mean, what does that mean? But yeah. So yeah, but it is true. But again, I'm not Chinese. I don't live in China, so I could never speak directly to their. I can listen to Will Yang tell me though. Valiant Renegade sends in a super chat and says, "My son and I went to see Godzilla vs. Kong last night in a theater. The first movie in a year. Adored it. We must save the big screen. Go out and support. And thanks, Rob, for being one of my YouTube inspirations. My channel exists because of guys like you." Well, thank you. I appreciate that. By the way, I got a video of our friend Aiden being taken secretly by his father, Jack, to go see Godzilla versus Kong, and I will be playing that at the top of the show tomorrow, and it is just as adorable as you hoped it might be. Ash Wins the Internet says, he said Dr. Woodrue. Terrible. Terrible. You Know the Hero sent in a super chat and says, hot news, New Gods and the Trench canceled. What you know the hero means is that today it was announced officially that DC has canceled Ava DuVernay's version of the New Gods. I never thought that was going to happen. It was never going to happen. Although she'd been working on it for a long time. And I'm sorry for Tom King, the comic book writer Tom King, because it was his big, I think, stepping stone into the feature world. And then also James Wan wanted to do a horror film called The Trench based on the monsters that we saw in Aquaman. That too has been canceled. So, yeah. It happened. It happened. Alsh Chauhan sends in a tip and says, April Fools, everyone. You did not spoil the joke with your laughter, Rob. The joke would have been spoiled had you not laughed. But this raises a good question. When analysis like this is presented of a bad film, is it a critical reading or is there merit? Well, I don't know, Ash. You know, it's funny. When I first started to read the letter, it was not apparent to me that what you were saying. But as I got into it, I'm like, okay. But I think that you do bring up good points. They might be brought up in jest, but that still doesn't mean they're not worth considering. Because I think that they are worth considering. So, indeed, I think it absolutely is worthy of consideration. Well, listen, I am going to end this show because you know that we have a members-only chat starting at 5 o'clock, people who are members of the chat. And we also have a members-only Zoom call. I mean, I hate to be the elitist guy that I am, but since YouTube made memberships available on the channel, we are doing these members-only Zoom chats. And you can participate in the Zoom chat for like 99 cents a month. But we did our first members-only Zoom chat 2 weeks ago, and it was a hoot. I'm going to put it up on YouTube so you guys can watch. And it was a hoot. So we're going to do that on Saturday. And then also in 15 minutes, we are going to have, yes, that's right, a Zoom chat or another Zoom show. So if you're a member, you can get the link. And it's basically Ask Me Anything. We'll just sit and chat, hang out, talk about whatever you want to talk about, and we'll see how that goes. But anyway, remember, mods, I hope you send me the name of our person that I've already forgotten who won. I will be giving away a Skyfighter Blu-ray, a 2-pack, a Skyfighter Blu-ray, and it comes with the movie and the soundtrack music, which is a throwback to 80s electronica. It's just kind of a fun artifact. But I'm going to be giving those away every day for the next couple weeks. And I hope you enjoy it. And I just need to get your name, phone number, and address. And they're going to be shipped directly to you from the facility that is making them. So there you go. And on that note, I want to say thank you to my moderating staff. I want to say thanks to Mike Bodden and the Richard and Joshua Levesque, who is here. And Louise is here. Louise X Sparrow. I love that. Louise X. I think she's an X-Man. Or I guess in her case, an X-woman. But still an X-Man. Because the X-Men are the X-Men, and I don't want to see anyone change her name. So Brian Hepburn is here. Bunyan Snipe is here. I want to thank all of you guys for being the great moderators that you are. I also want to thank all of you for sending tips and super chats, supporting the channel in that way. Very much appreciated. You can write me letters free of charge. Go to the Burnettwork.net website, and the letters that are read here are also up there, and you can comment on them if you'd like. No obligation, but you can if you want. And yeah, so there you go. And on that note, I'm going to end Robservations episode number 657. And I want to say, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And remember, Elizaviews returns, whining about movies with Godzilla vs. King Kong and Doll Quest. Elizabeth Gwendolyn Bell's movie will debut whichever day, if it's either tomorrow or Saturday. I will be showing Doll Quest putting it up so you can watch it, and then you can comment on it and talk about it with her on the show. So there you go. That's all the news that is fit to print. I don't know if I'm on John Campy's show tomorrow because he had a blood clot in his leg and he was hospitalized. He's back home now, which is why I wasn't on today. So anyway, he's better. He's doing okay. And that's a good thing. So get well, John. Maybe I'll be on the show tomorrow. If not, there will be Robservations tomorrow, maybe a whining about movies tomorrow, and all of that. As always, have a better day, and I'll see you members in 15 minutes.